into Between the Lines, presented by Continental Diamond. I'm Tatum Everett alongside Ben Leber, and the Vikings get the shutout victory over the Raiders for their 7th win of the season. And Ben, after the bye week, nothing better than coming back to Minnesota with a win. What could you say about the overall defensive performance in this one, being able to shut out the Raiders?
Well, look, I think going into this game, I was giving Aiden O'Connell, and I'll still give him a lot of respect, watching the film. When he gets time with this offense, he's actually pretty good. For being a rookie that's still trying to figure it out, I thought that if we could get him off his spot, if we could pressure him, then we could have some success. And that running game is so physical that I was a little apprehensive about, being, bold with our defense playing as well as they have. But they came out with their hair on fire. Out of the bye week, they picked up right where they left off, and I got to say, the way they closed out the game is what impressed me the most. 3 3-and-outs, the takeaway by Ivan Pace to basically seal the game, and then that last sort of garbage fumble recovery. So they end up with 2 takes there in the fourth quarter. I mean, you couldn't finish more dominant.
No, and this team is actually undefeated under Kevin O'Connell when they win the turnover margin. So that's always a good key to victory. We see Harrison Smith back here walking. It's the first defensive shutout since 2017. And you mentioned probably the player of the game in Ivan Pace Jr. You got to talk to him after the game. What did you like about him today?
Well, I've always liked his aggressiveness going downhill. I mean, we saw that right when we were starting to get to know him in training camp. He's just so fast. The way that he can diagnose plays and how physical he is for being a little guy. And when I had a chance to talk to him after the game, by the way, 13 tackles, a sack and an interception for his stat line. But I just love the confidence that he has. I mean, he's like, I've got that dog in me. He's like, I want to prove to everybody that I'm an undrafted guy, that they got it wrong. And so, guys talk about playing with that chip on their shoulder a lot. Like, he has a legit reason to have a chip on his shoulder, and he plays with that chip on his shoulder every single week.
And we just saw Brian Flores over here walking this way as someone who has obviously had a lot of confidence in this defense and letting them loose. However, I am going to bring up maybe something that was a little bit on the disappointing side, and that was Justin Jefferson's injury in this game. He played only 13 snaps after returning from the injured reserve. He was brought to a local hospital, just out of precaution. It's just disheartening, but the team was able to rally and still get the win in this one. Despite other injuries to the offensive line, you saw Brian O'Neill go out. That one is still questionable at this time that we're recording this. Is there something about playing on grass, or does anything make a difference when it comes to some of the injuries that happened today?
I don't think so. I mean, Pete Bursich and I talked about during our radio broadcast, like whether or not, this field gets wheeled out, gets in the sun, it's natural grass. Is it the softness, or is it too firm? Like, what is it like? And you can tell in between the numbers, they put new turf down. So it seems like they weren't exactly happy with the way it was performing. But I think some of these things, are just freak injuries. I really don't think it has much to do with the playing surface. A couple of guys get stepped on. I think Dalton Reisner, he comes back into the game, but I think he got stepped on by another player. It's just a violent game, and you look at JJ's situation. That was a ball that was delivered probably a little bit too high. And good for him to go out in the middle of the field knowing he's got a roaming free safety playing center field. He goes up, exposes his body, he knows he's going to take a hit, makes the catch, and absorbs the hit. So obviously that has nothing to do with the playing surface.
Of course not.
It's just the way the game is played. It's violent.
Yeah, no, totally understandable. Alexander Madison also leaving the game in this one, so the Vikings don't leave here without having a few injuries. However, in the fourth quarter, the offense really felt like it came alive when Nick Mullins got in the game. He completed 3 massive third down completions to KJ Osborne, TJ Hawkinson, and then Jordan Addison to lead to the Greg Joseph game-winning field goal. What changed about the offense when Mullins got in the game?
I think it just comes down to anticipation. I've been talking about it all season long with these last few games with Dobbs, is like, as much as we love his electricity, I think to be a true quarterback in this system, he's got to have some time, to get involved, to understand the anticipation aspect of having all these different receivers. And that's no fault of his own. I mean, he's just still learning. It takes a while. I mean, we saw Kirk Cousins, in the first year in this offense. There are times where he's still trying to figure it out. So in all fairness to Dobbs, he just doesn't have enough time. And you look at that last drive with Mullins, and he was throwing the ball at these guys as these guys were coming out of their breaks. You could see there was a rhythm to this passing attack. And that's what and obviously there's a juice. There's obviously a little juice. When I see him over over here taking snaps.
Yeah.
You know, getting the offensive lineman around him to talk about his cadence, and you see guys dapping him up, and you see a little bit more of these guys like pick themselves up a little bit. He brought an element of juice because he's a different voice. You know, he knows this offense, and they probably have a little bit more confidence in him.
He was also able to hit TJ Hawkinson for a couple of times. Now TJ has 84 receptions, making him the most receptions by a Vikings tight end in a single season. So a little history being made out here tonight. Maybe a little bit of history when it comes to punting as well. There were 17 punts. 9 by the Vikings. It was incredible. But I think it all comes back to that defensive performance.
Yeah.
The Vikings had 8 punts, forced 8 punts, 4 of them on 3 and outs. And they're going to be right back at it in 6 days, Ben, when they take on the Bengals, who also won today. What can we expect from a matchup like that in just 6 days, coming off something like what happened today?
Well, thankfully, we are coming off that bye week, and now you mentioned, Tatum, like all the injuries that we sustained today. We'll see the severity of some of these injuries, but that'll be a big part of it as they just have a short week going to Cincinnati. But the thing that I think that we really didn't talk about from an offensive standpoint, because there wasn't a lot of highlights, our ability to recreate a line of scrimmage in the run game. This is not a great Raiders run defense. We all knew that coming in. But you know, they changed their defensive philosophy too coming out of the bye week. So it was sort of a clean slate. We were more physical than they were.
Yeah.
And we were running the ball downhill on them. And it wasn't always just like guys hitting the designated hole. We were just pushing them back. And so I think going on a short week with these injuries, whether who's in there at offensive line, those guys like to move forward all the time. So I think we go in this mentality of let's just play bully ball, and we might have to win another 3-0 game or a 6-3 game.
A win's a win, Ben.
If it's a win, it's a win.
If it's a win, it's a win. And as you mentioned, I mean, Ed Ingram was not active in this game starting, so Blake Brandell was in there, and then Brian O'Neill out of the game, so you saw David Questenberry in there. And so you just saw so many missing pieces. It really was next man up. And up next for these Vikings are the Cincinnati Bengals. And Ben, I don't know if you know this, but I heard it was Ivan Pace Jr.'s birthday on Saturday.
That's what I heard too.
And his 5th season of college ball. He played in
Cincinnati.
So who knows? Maybe it'll be another big game from the guy who says he's got the dog in him. Who knows?
I hope so. I hope that we continue to see the dog shine, and he'll shine on Saturday, hopefully in front of a lot of family and friends. I mean, if you weren't already a fan, Vikings fans, you need to be one now.
Definitely so. Well, the Vikings are now 7-6 on the season with a lot of games left to be played, still in that playoff consideration. From Las Vegas, I'm Tatum Everett. This is Ben Leber, and this has been Between the Lines.